part of assignment 5. So in the previous video, we built a basic framing model for a 8-foot wide by 8-foot tall single-story exterior wall with a 12-12 vented roof truss that has a raised heel, and that sits atop a 4-foot stem wall with a poured concrete footing. So as much as that's exciting, it's maybe not the most helpful thing to most folks who just see this as a big white stick model. In many cases, applying texture and product names and even, the graphics of tapes gives your team the affordance of what materials you want them to use, especially when you want them to understand. In this case, you're using a Zip R6 sheathing. We're going to tape that to the foundation with something called Sega Frenchroom. That's a primerless tape that bonds to sheathing and concrete, so wonderful product. You might be specifying them to use a 4-inch zip sheathing tape as well, and in many cases maybe a 1/2-inch zip roof sheathing, or in our case 5/8 roof sheathing, and communicating that, you know what, team, the reddy brown stuff goes on the roof, the green stuff with insulation goes on the wall, black tape in the zip sheathing, and the gray stuff goes at the bottom. Not everyone's familiar with the names of zip tape and Frenchroom tape, and these things might be new to them. So colors and textures can give people a lot of support here. So in your file, you are given a bunch of textures. These are pre-scaled. So we have plywood, we have a OSB, we have particle board, we have Advantech subfloor sheathing. This is 3/4. We have 7/16 zip system sheathing. We have, in this case, 1/2-inch, but you can use the same hatch for 5/8 roof sheathing. We have a hatch for dense glass from Georgia Pacific. For membranes, we have Sega Myrex, so interior membrane. We have 500 SA, mechanically fastened 200 from Sega as well. Some gravel, concrete, conventional lumber, this kind of orangey one you can use for LVL, and then there's some tapes here. So there's zip sheathing tape. For Sega's product line, there are some wig gloves, some Frenchroom, and some Resan. So for today, we're going to be using zip system, the 7/16, 5/8 for the roof, some zip system tape, and some of the other sheet products. So let's put those into play here. As long as these colors in these swatches don't come with SketchUp, we have to make these. So I've made these for you. I put them in your file. As long as you have these textures, so if you have them in a different model, if you copy and paste them into this model, it's going to give you this option. When we go up here to Window and then Materials, you'll notice that you've got the material menu. There are some default materials. We go to the drop-down menu. Let's go to wood down here. There are some lovely wood textures. None of them really resemble things you might find in a building yard, but they might work okay. You won't find zip sheathing. You won't find Advantech. You won't find Sega's materials, and you won't find the plywood sample I have in here. So it does work in a pinch, but they're not the most representative of building products. But because you've copy and pasted these swatches we provided you, if you go to Colors in Model, this is where those unique textures show up here. So as long as the swatches are in the model, they're now available to you as a color palette. So that's the first thing. Let's add some texture here. Let's start with really easy. Let's do the foundation. We're simply going to go use what we're going to use for concrete. So we're going to go Colors and Model. So if your material swatch isn't open yet, go to Window, Materials, Colors and Model. We're going to click on the dark gray kind of concrete swatch and use that for our foundation. Boom, wonderful, fantastic. We're going to use, because we want a capillary break under the slab, we use the gravel texture. Wonderful. Our slab itself, let's use a light gray material. It's a different pour, maybe different consistency of concrete. So we're kind of denoting that it's different here. And then my insulation, if you're using EPS, it is white, but it doesn't really give the affordance that it is a textured material. So we're going to use this kind of dot hatch pattern and bucket those. Okay, so when I bucket a group, that bucket applies it to every face of that group. In this case, I've actually grabbed this slab assembly, move it up so you can see the bottom of it, and I orbit down. You'll notice that it actually colored all 6 sides. So that's pretty great for homogeneous materials like concrete, gravel, and foam. When you paint bucket that group, it applies it to all sides. Now, framing members are a little different. If I click on the bottom plate, in the previous video we learned how to make this a component. So you notice that if I click on that bottom plate and I click on the top of it again, so double click into the group, and I select, let's say I select the end face, you'll notice that it also highlights the ends of the other 2 matching components, which is very helpful. So if I click out of it, and I simply click it once, it selects all 6 sides. I'm going to go to the right here and use this kind of wood texture, looks like a wood grain, and I'm going to paint bucket. Let's select all 6 sides here. I'm going to hit my paint bucket to get that wood. It's a bit of lag here in my computer. There we go. Okay, so if I have all 6 sides selected by triple clicking and I paint bucket, it's going to color all 6 sides. So that might be good depending on my level of detail I want. You'll notice here we go up, because it's a component, it colored all 6 sides of the other 2 top plates. Now wood, as you know, has grain, it has direction, so if I want to be a bit more clear that this is dimensional lumber, is if I double click on a single face, so I'm going to double click into this group, rather than triple clicking, that does all sides, I'm simply going to select the end. I then can go up, and I've given you a end grain texture. Select that paint bucket, and I bucket the end. What that's going to do is, you notice you go up to the top, is it also put an end grain on these matching 2 pieces. So it is small detail, but it does, again, give more affordance that this is dimensional lumber. So I can rotate around here. Again, I could apply that texture to all 6 sides. So again, some lag here. Okay, I could apply that to all 6 sides, but that's really not what a 2x6 looks like. So I want that large predominant texture to be applied first, that kind of wraps that surface in, you know, the 4-sided material, so I'm not doing it to all 4 sides. I then go in individually to the sides that are unique. Click on the different texture, just color those ends, orbit, flip around, go into the end here, select just that end, see how it's hatched here but not the sides. Again, grab that wood texture, the end grain, and hit the end. Okay. Same thing here on my studs. I'm going to select that component, select all 6 sides, paint bucket. Okay, works pretty well. Again, because they're components, I'm not doing all this work again. For my roof truss, very similar. I'm going to, because the predominant texture wrap is going to be that wood texture, I'm going to select all 6 sides. I'm going to grab that wood texture. I'm going to paint bucket, and again, it does it to every single surface of that, that component. Now, the bottom chords are also dimensional lumber, so I'm going to click into that component. You'll notice that every end is now hatched. That shows you that you've used component successfully. I'm going to click on that hatch pattern and just do the end. And I'm going to repeat that process on the ends of my raptor tails. So I'm just going to select this one now. Same thing, do that one. Then I'm going to rotate up to the top where I have one more. Oops, not tape. And there we go, you got end grain. Okay, so now we've got, so really in a couple minutes, we've got foundation. This is already more clear. This is doing a much better job communicating how this building is assembled, and for younger team members, gives them some affordance of what the materials are. Okay, pretty killer. Let's do some sheathing now and have some real fun. So wall sheathing for something like zip is pretty specific. It's easy to identify at the yard, it's printed, it's green. So let's make our sheathing here also reflect zip sheathing. Zip sheathing is two components, especially, zip R at least. We have this integrated WRB that's printed and adhered to the face of the OSB, and then that is glued to this layer of polyiso. That's what makes it zip R. That's the insulated sheathing part. So we're going to make this our sheathing actually the same. The polyiso component behind, I'm going to click this first smaller half sheet. I'm going to double click again to select just the back polyiso piece. In this kind of color lineup, there's a kind of like a yellowy color here you can use for polyiso. It's not quite white, not quite yellow. So again, triple click to get all 6 sides of that shape, and then paint bucket that. For the building face itself, this is now the sheathing. I can triple click to get all 6 sides of the sheathing layer of that component, and the bulk material I want to wrap all 6 sides with first is going to be this OSB texture. So that's oriented strand board. I'm going to paste that, and that's coated all 6 sides of it. But we know that zip sheathing has a unique face to it. So once I paint bucketed all 6 sides of the sheathing layer, I then just select the front face. I click on it once more time. One more time. And you notice now it's just selected the face. So if I now go back here to the zip sheathing layer, or material rather, in paint bucket, it just does the front. All right. If I would have had all 6 sides still selected, see how the front here is hatched and so is the side, and I went to my green bucket, it's going to wrap, oops, let's get the green one. It does all 6 sides. I don't want that. I want the edges in the back to be OSB, so I paint bucket that first. I then select just the front, get my zip sheathing texture again, and paint bucket just the front. Okay, now if I double click out, boom, components, right? Because I made components of a half sheet, that's the unique version of that full sheet, I'm able to duplicate my work. The top one is the same process. I'm going to select all 6 sides of that back group. I go to this kind of gross yellow color for polyiso. I'm then going to select the front copy here, all 6 sides of it, click on the OSB texture, select just the front face, and then drop the zip on there. So already this is doing wonders for us to communicate, what is this sheathing? What's the product you want your team to do? And maybe even in case, what's the sheathing layout you want them to actually mirror? Okay, let's do the roof now. Roof is, well, pretty darn the same. We're going to select this roof sheathing. You notice here, when we copied this, we did not make a component. We simply moved and copied it. So if I go in here and actually apply all my texture, it's not going to copy it. So if I made that mistake, I could just simply grab that upper sheet, delete it, right click, make that a component, and call that 5/8 roof sheathing. Enter. I then go in here and go move, so M option, sorry, move copy, so M option or move control on a PC. I'm going to move and copy that up so that I have 2 components of that zip sheathing. So when I do this work, I don't have to do it twice. So now I go in and I select that sheet, all 6 sides. So triple click to get all 6 sides. I'm going to paint bucket that first one because I want that texture to apply to all sides of that OSB. Okay, now I just select the front face, so I hit spacebar to exit that command, select the front face, then pick my roof sheathing texture. It's the kind of orangey, browny red one. I'm going to paint bucket. There we go. So this is working pretty well. This now communicates, you know what? It's a different product on top, different product down below. We've textured or at least added some color to that polyiso so it's not quite white. And even down here with our EPS layer, we have textured that with a hatch to show, you know what? This isn't just a white box, you know, something closer to EPS. The last thing we can do here is start to show our team members, and we'll do this in future workshops. We can add the rest of the kind of detailing of the assembly to show how we make an envelope. We're always trying to practice airtight construction, and we need to do that at the framing stage. So you notice here in this completed model, we have a couple pieces missing in our current step here, and that's tape. So to apply tape to a project, it really communicates to a group, you know what, we have fence trim down here. We're using a 4-inch flashing tape on the field and the seams here for zip sheathing. So let's do that together. We're going to go into our model here, and I'm not going to select any group. I'm going to draw on the face of these groups. So I'm going to use my guideline, so hit T for tape. I'm going to find that horizontal seam in my zip sheathing. Click on the edge, and I'm going to pull up in the blue axis. I could hit the up arrow to stay constrained, or just go up in the blue axis. I'm going to set that guide 2 inches off that seam. And you notice that it snaps right to, well, snaps. It aligns with the texture. We've scaled the texture so it fits perfectly on a 4x8 sheet. I'm going to snap again from that seam line, come down in the blue axis 2 inches. And then I'm going to go rectangle and trace from where the guideline intersects the outside edge to where this guideline intersects the outside edge. And it, of course, makes a new surface because I've drawn on top of those groups. I haven't drawn in the groups. So now if I triple click this new surface and boundary, I can right click, make group, double click to select it. Sorry, try it again. Double click to select it, hit P to push, and we're going to push it out 1/16, so 1/16, enter. You'll notice that if I don't apply thickness to something like tape, even though tape has almost no thickness, SketchUp doesn't know which surface do we want it to currently model. Do we want it to show the green layer or the white one? Because they're in the same plane, they're occupying the same space, it kind of has like a panic moment and shows you kind of both at once. So not so helpful. If we were to go in here and then apply our zip tape layer to that, so you know what, that's tape, doesn't really work, right? It's also why sometimes it's hard to select because you're selecting the same plane. So instead, when we made that first outline, kind of pivot around until you can see more of that white shape. So when you double click, you're selecting the surface and the boundary of that new plane. Right click, make group, double click, P for push, and we're going to give it thickness, 1/16. This now means that we've drawn basically a very flat rectangle in front of our sheathing, and that's going to allow us to apply texture. So I'm now going to select all 6 sides of it, click on the zip tape material swatch, wait for my paint bucket leg to process, and then click, and then boom, okay? You have just flashed your first sheathing layer or sheathing seam line in SketchUp. There you go. Let's do the bottom now. So let's use some fence trim down here, something a bit different. I could do the same thing. I can come down here and do my same alignment, come up 2 inches, enter, come down 2 inches, make a shape, but I don't have to do that. I could simply go and grab this layer of zip tape, click on the group. The blue boundary is going to help you find it. I'm going to hit move and copy. I'm going to select the midpoint of that piece of tape, so at that 4-inch piece, so right there. I'm going to grab it, I'm going to move and copy it down to the bottom. Snap it to this seam here because I'm putting that sheathing, sorry, that Fentrum between the zip sheathing and the foundation wall. I can then click into all pieces of it, go to the Fentrum swatch, which is kind of looks like a gray horizontal rectangle, and then paste that. Okay, and click out of it. So now I've got tape down here and tape up here. Now I can do this, of course, because I did not make that first piece of zip tape a component. So I was able to change them without making them unique. So depending on the scale of your model, I don't have this piece of tape replicated anywhere else. I don't have to make it a component yet. If I'm doing an entire building, I probably want to do these separately. Now let's do this last piece in the middle here. That is, again, the same process. I hit T for tape. I'm going to come over 2 inches in the green axis, go over 2 inches again, green axis. I hit R for rectangle. I can go in here and start from here and then come down to the bottom. There we go. Again, orbit until you find a bit more of that white is showing. So it's easier to select. Triple click, right click, make group. Double click, select the face. P for push. Pull it out 1/16. Right, tapes need thickness to really see them. Now select it, and then apply your zip tape, and there you go. But you'll notice here, SketchUp doesn't know that that single graphic, it kind of sees the image of the zip system tape as a texture. It doesn't know you want that tape to actually run vertically. So what we need to do is actually rotate this last texture. So to do that, this is where I have to change the operation. Right now we have taken this last hatch and we've applied it to all 6 sides. Because when I triple click that shape here and I pasted it, it wrapped it on all 6 sides. So when I select this front face only and I right click, you notice that I'm not given it an option to change the texture. When I want to rotate or adjust any texture, its orientation in the model, I have to apply it to just one side of the sheathing. So let me show you how I do this actually on a little model next door here. So let's make a block. Let's just make a rectangle on the ground, like so. I'm going to double click, right click, oops, triple click, right click, make group. I'm going to push it up. Let's push it up here, I don't know, 2 feet. Okay, so we've got a square. Big old square. I triple click all 6 sides, and I'm going to apply, let's use actually the zip sheathing so you can actually see it. Okay, and it wraps the box. So that might work okay for us. But let's say, you know what, on this front face, I want to run that sheathing vertically. I probably want to show the sheathing texture going up the wall versus side to side. So to do that, I have to actually select just that front face I want to rotate, and I'm going to paint bucket it again. Okay, just the front face. Now, when I right click with the paint bucket tool on, after paint bucketing just that face, now a new dialog shows up, a texture dialog called position. You'll notice on the sides that I didn't paint on their own, if I right click them, right click, it's harder to change that position. So I need to select that face only, apply that texture, right click, go to texture, position, okay? And now you can see that's the full swatch, what it looks like when it replicates. And now I go and I right click again, I go to rotate, and I rotate it 90. So now that swatch is going, you know, left to right on the side and then up and down on that front face. So let's do that to our tape here. We're going to double click into our group, select just this front face, and I can verify that because just the front face is hatched. I'm going to make sure I've just paint bucketed the front with that texture. Right click, texture, position, right click again, rotate 90. Okay, zoom out to verify it's good. Hit spacebar to deselect, and then click out of the group. Okay, and now I've successfully rotated the tape. And again, it shows your team, I want you to roll this way. And using that texture rotate tool might be helpful for you, especially with textures that have graphics and lettering that reads left to right. Okay, so that's the end of this assignment. And again, you want to go up here and clean up your model, edit, delete guides, so that your finished model has a textured foundation, slab assembly, wall framing, truss framing, roof sheathing on top, and wall framing down here. For added bonus, go ahead and throw a row of tape on that zip system roof sheathing product to make sure you're weather tight before the weekend. Okay, good luck.